Hey, how's it going? It's Georgie here. So I know, as you can see, I'm sitting in my car right now, and I know, given my circumstance and the recent situations in our happenings, I know it's been a while since I've actually sat in front of a camera and actually put my face in front of a camera for within about a couple of months back. I want to say probably at least a couple of months back as a result, and due to our the strike of the COVID-19 that hit us, and having said that, we have had to really come across improvising ourselves to taking care of what's actually needed instead of constantly distracting or preoccupying ourselves to add ourselves our own our own personal videos in front of the camera. And doing so, we really had to, of course, in the constant in the concepts of what I've discussed in my recent recordings, which, of course, my focus was based on waking up through the pandemic that we've been going through with the COVID-19, the coronavirus, the virus, of course, that we've haven't really fully discovered as to why it happened, and knowing the extent of what is truly really behind it. What is it that's distracting us from the happenings of why we're still wearing the masks? As of course, why we wear the masks is for the purposes to prevent the occurring of the airborne and the virus itself. As the circumstance of the COVID-19 continues on, and when things get slowly reopened, as it is in the process right now, and when which things are getting reopened, restaurants, local stores, consumer departments have opened back up slowly but surely through our own use and practices of using social distancing. So pardon the interruption of what I include in relation to an extent of why the COVID-19 happened. And I won't even go fully into detail as to, and again, what's fully behind it. You can fully research that for yourself, and of course, our own needed priorities, in which we address, of course, such as the very basic priorities that you fully focus on, whether you're tied up with family or if you're tied up through struggles that you're trying to take care of, whether it being finance, medical, and all that. So, by the discussion of waking up through the pandemic, and again, that's fully up to you to take advantage of the resources that's currently being used right now, having been talked about through my previous experiences before and the finance market. One brief conversation I mentioned about the finance market is the market usually goes down in times of unsurprised or a catastrophic event, hence given including the coronavirus that happened, that basically slowed down the progress of the markets in any industry based company areas, whether including trade, telecommunications. But in again, the increase of influence on the 5G technology, for example, another influence of the telemarketing industry that's yet to still increase, but an increase of perhaps more access to technology. But then again, I fully advise that all of us actually do our homeworks, and again, be aware and extent as to why the 5G is in the process and it still has been in the talks through the federal government and in the very partnered technological companies, whether it being America, Asia, and partnered technological companies through Apple softwares, Apple phones, Verizon, Sprint, Huawei from China, of course, Huawei being the technological industry in China, and those many of the telecom companies at large. But hence, going back into the waking up through the pandemic, and then of the examples that I've mentioned already, it's a strike. It's a strike to whether we fully determined exactly to realize that really we're living through an interesting time. We've lived through the interesting times where our recent history has occurred that what we have come across, seeing or witnessing, is really only a sniffle to most of us, because we seem to find out that this virus that's happened is an unsurprised attack, of course, that we are totally unaware of as to why it happened, and therefore, of course, that's one of the reasons why the internet is there for us, is to research and purposefully just go out there and do your own research and homework, versus, and again, what we're always being fed with throughout the very mainstream medias that we pay attention to, of course, that, most cases we're bought into, because we strongly comprehend that the human behavior needs information. Therefore, with information that you have, information you can take in quickly, that's why, of course, you reach towards those sources, whether it being newspaper, TV, media. For example, a quick conversation that I just had with my parents as I was eating dinner a few hours ago. They're living down in Virginia, retired, having a good life right now, enjoying themselves for a change. What I advise everyone doing the same too, to really find time where you can actually spend more of your time and energy buying more freedom for yourself than to be depending on one source to suffice your needs. What I'm saying is, be more resourceful. Add more energy and your time to your investments. Not on anyone's investments to increase their interest, but to add more your time and energy on your own investments. So why am I saying that? So, and again, go back to I'll stick to the example conversation I've had with just my parents, because having conversations with parents is very important too, as well. That's how you gain wisdom. That's how I gain wisdom, is from them and their perspective of the experiences that they've been through in life. The conversations you've had in relation to reading about resources, whether it being food, technology, medical, healthcare, infrastructure, manufacture, anything in particular, and again, hence the conversations that it's being talked about in the family with the occurring of the coronavirus, taking really the action steps to be aware. And again, hence washing your hands every day, practicing the safe health needs. And perhaps, why we didn't do that before, as to realize that when this virus woke us up, hence this is probably one of the reasons that we didn't exactly come across doing. Taking care of ourselves, practicing a safe practice health needs. Some things that doctors tell us every day, but then again, do we listen to our doctors? No, of course. As some of us can be opinionated or open-minded to understand and listen, we can at least exercise those things, exercise those practices. So, by actually providing more concept of my personal understanding from the basis of just basically in the very areas of what I carry with, for example, my job. My job requires that I perform the safety practices to make sure that I maintain my health and the well-being of my body. I take care of the very basis of what you can do to avoid the exposure to health costs, the expensive health costs. One of the reasons, again, why doctors have talked about so many times, where one of the things that, and again, this is totally going by examples as to the COVID-19 reasons, the COVID-19 factors as to why sometimes the virus happened. Not an extent to what's truly behind it. Yes, there are truths behind it, to go back, to go on and extend to this particular situation that we can fully work on, and just to wake up to our senses, really wake up to your senses, everybody. Waking up, that's really what it should be about. And going about your day, yes, important, but having fun and extend to the social gatherings that we have today. So the social gatherings that now we have, be able to actually go to in the restaurants, bars, and again, being careful. Using your safe practices, all the essentials, and again, things of which have led us to complacency, and again, the simple things. But it's okay to get back into the basics. One of the things of those many struggles that companies today struggle is the basics. The basics to pay attention to the revenue. How is the progress of their revenue going? Perhaps the progress of their revenue has decreased because of the basics that they failed to. One concept I've learned from a billionaire mindset, and I know it's not really talked about and as far-fetched as it sounds to say, but when you've compromised the basics and the needed resources for your, let's say, the labor force that allows you to perform the needed structures to help increase the business structure, when you've compromised the business structure and the basics of the function to the business, and instead you concentrate your profits, that is where you are bound to fail. Why I say that? Because there have been many of those companies that have filed for bankruptcy. Could they have filed for bankruptcy because they've compromised their very basic interest to gain, for the money gain, for the purpose of the money gain? And again, not everything is meant to be perfect, but as of course, it's going to take a lot of brains and power, brain power, and really just plenty of diagnostics to be worked on in every aspect of the industry. So the essence, the importance, the whole basic structure. Having fun in a way, of course, enjoying the fruits of your labor when you've improved your basic standards, whether it being personal, business, work life, in anything we put our minds to. More concentration for ourselves too, and in the very aspects of having the me time to enjoy every precious commodity as you can. So by example, when we've heard shocking news of the NBA player Kobe Bryant that died from a helicopter crash, the successes that he's had, basketball player. Not that I actually fully followed through his performance in all his plays, but you can see that he had done a lot to achieve as a player. The success mindset you put into to follow, the people that you can pay attention to. Far-fetched as it may be, but you're going to take action in the very hard things that are not easy to do, but it can force you to change. It can enable everyone to change because, and again, we're not going to be so bogged down and fed with about having the normal life, being lured to the normal and the complacency. Don't be afraid to achieve your unpotential goals. Don't be afraid. What are you afraid of? What's holding you back to go towards those goals? Is it your social life? Is it your association? Remember, one thing I learned about from one billionaire's mindset, or many investors' mindset, is your association is power. Association is power in what you do. And as many times as it's repeated in seminars too. People go to seminars for one of the reasons why I've been to a seminar before myself. Going to a seminar one time after my brief involvement in the Worldwide Dream Builders seminar that's sponsored by Amway, the Worldwide Dream Builders, a mentorship program improvement for anyone that wants to get into the business mindsets to be an independent business thinker and business success, to get themselves out there, to be more extroverted than as introverted for most of the time. So by the very aspects of changing, making the full sacrifice to change, what's one thing that you're willing to change to improve yourself? For example, the one thing I'm willing to sacrifice is my enjoyments. One of my best things I enjoy doing now is just going out to a golf course, the drive range, to hit the golf balls, to basically help myself relieve the stress from the work week, of course, the very things, or even reading too, the very things. Right now I'm actually taking an online course that's going to allow me to get to know more about my health, the health education that, as most of us, yes, we tend to lag, but we don't even tend to make the effort to actually get to know of our health, the health and well-being. So as a young person, 29 years old, I've had a great upbringing about health, having the health education under my belt before, having the improved upbringings and the schoolings that I've had. It's not as perfect as it is, and again, we go through an extent to improve ourselves personally. As I've learned this one concept, and I just came up with this recently, haven't been through my brief studies and research that I've completed before. The one thing we control in this world is actually ourselves. We have no control of anything that is in front of us. For example, the finance industry, the market. We have no control of the market. You can be in the market, but you have no control of the market. For example, I'm actually in the market part-time myself, investing in stocks. But I'm in there for, a piece of pie that I can get. Yeah, I can gain knowledge. I can keep doing the homework, keep studying about the market, the strategy. But it's what I cannot control. Therefore, my investments I continue to contribute. Yes, it's a worthy, what I consider as a worthy risk. Yes and no from a basis. But again, that's up to my area of the perception, my perseverance. And so in continuing with this conversation, waking up through the pandemic, not talking about the very complacent or the typical mediocre things, I don't really care for much of that, and neither should you. Neither should most of us. Most of us should really care more about the basic needed concerns, the precious commodities that we have in the greatest country we live in the world, America. The freedom of liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the right to work, the right to have a career, to run a business, to enter ourselves, yes, within the corporate world. That it's not as very fair, not meant to be fair, and that's why we live in a world where fairness does not exist. We're gonna have to come to understand that we have things that we can only control, and what we really control is what we make from our wallets, what we eat, and what we do in the confines of our own health and well-being. Whether it be physical exercise, getting plenty of rest, going to see our doctors annually, and in this case, in many struggles and improvements to getting rid of our pride and ego, sucking up our ego, very important. But, it's okay to still have some of that ego, but when you let that take over, yes, it's a big, complete problem. One principal concept I learned is about checking the ego from Extreme Ownership, the book Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, former ex-Navy SEAL, narrated by him and Leif Babin, of the two former ex-Navy SEALs who have led Navy SEAL teams in the 2001s in the Iraq War. They have their own podcast right now on YouTube. You can YouTube it, actually. They have their episodes where you can get more synopsis on their podcast. And of other very personal development-based podcasts that you can focus on to improve yourself, of course. If you think that's not going to help, then, I advise that you take other actions to what's going to help you more, what's going to help you stay in motion. Having that momentum to carry your posture, your attitude. So, in an example from the monotonous situations that we work through, from the very basis of the monotonous situations I work through, and I work in a warehouse distribution-based production and manufacturing of things that's being processed, ordered, packaged, lots of movement. High volume of noise, high volume of movement, high volume of crowd consumption. And the very basis of when people work together, it's hard to sometimes, understand what's exactly going on. And again, this is something that I don't have control of. I have control of what I can control, what I can only control, such as myself, my attitude, my temper. Okay, these are examples I mentioned. These are things that we don't, sometimes when we're so complacent, we don't critically work on it. We just don't, because we just want to dumb down our brains or just numb down the pain and the realities through use of drugs and alcohol, the substance abuse sources that we've so been bogged down with. And again, it's hence the very reasons why most of us are so poor, and that all falls back to choice, control, self-discipline, the needed basic commodities that we can have, productivity, and what we carry with every day. Prioritize and execute. One of the other first concepts that Jocko Willink talked about is prioritize and execute. In the book Discipline Equals Freedom, prioritize and execute the very needed priorities that you have, the concerns that you have. It can be anything. So in an extents to my previous recordings I talked about from waking up through the pandemic, these are things that we can fully work on. Things of which are meant to reflect, but also take action with. Action. That's what I've been told many times, and I've come across from many sources I've learned about through homework and just in gaining self-knowledge in my understandings, not just through my spiritual foundation, but also through the sources, the needed sources, the real sources, at the very basis of not be bogged down with, not be bought into what I should be hearing, but be bought into what I should actually open up with, to listen more carefully than be bogged down with jumping to conclusions. We jump to conclusions so much every day. That's what exhausts ourselves. That's what we find exhausting with and so tiring of. Hearing the negativity, the negative attitude. One thing I would say to someone, it could be a coworker or it could be a family relative, is stop telling me that. Why do you need to tell me about what's going on in the news? I don't want to hear that. I don't have control of that. The only thing I have control is myself. And you should as well. You should take that suggestion. You should take that advice. Don't let them suck you in to the crowd. That's the herd. The herd wants to hear what's going on. I don't care what the herd is talking about. I care about what I can control. My health, my family, my life, my means to be able to put food in my mouth every day, my means to be able to get plenty of rest, my means to be able to prove myself that I am worthy as a person, whether I am an effective communicator at work with my friends whom I attend social gatherings, and whether that includes you too. You know, if it's going to include sacrificing your fake friends, yeah, sacrifice it. There's always more you can have. More friends comes along the way. More friends, more opportunities. Association is power. I go back from the beginning. Association is power. Whether it be in making more real friends through that association. You know, one of the things I've thought about one day is when I do get through with my improvements in the work-life balance, which I am working on as a person, is being in a mastermind. The mastermind program is going to allow me to increase my profession in the world of the finance, in the world of the technology, the manufacturing, production of what's going on, in the world where I can still be of service but not be caught up in the affairs. Yes, it's very important that, you know, in everything we do, it's a blessing and a curse, but the great things about what bad things happen is the good. The good comes back on us. The good of everything. So take this reflective video and really just absorb that. Absorb that. You know, just take that time to let it soak up. Let what you learn every day, whether being meaningful, soak that information up. Give it a real purpose. Know and understand that, look, in life, there is more to anything. There is more to everything than what you are surrounded with. In life, there is more to everything than what you are surrounded. One concept I learned from a great actor, by the way, Denzel Washington. He made a very inspirational video I came across through YouTube. I watched it several times. It's one of those channels in motivational madness. He came up with this one concept. Sometimes in life, things are worthwhile. Things are not worth. Sometimes in life, things are worthwhile unless you take risks. When you take risks, you find that you have worthwhile opportunities come your way. Now, it's very understanding that when we make backup plans, that we make extreme understanding, you take extreme measures to make the backup plans. That is, of course, you know, it's understandable and exempt to in very many important industries that you need, whether being medical, fire service, finance industry. It's very important. But when you take risks, you better be ready to fall forward. Fall forward. That's one of the last concepts that I learned. Fall forward in anything you do. Fall forward in the very aspects of the choices you make. And be accountable. You know, one of the things that we struggle is accountability. Being accountable for the mistakes that you make. I won't even go into detail of the kind of mistakes that I made. I'll be very simple and brief. But for example, when I was lured into the quick money, you know, I got lured into the unpromised job opportunities I was offered with from a technology company. I got lured into the money that they gave me, which had turned out to be fraudulent checks that increasingly affected my finance, that increasingly affected my situation. Emotions got in the way, therefore my excitement got away, and I got hooked. I got tempted, hook, line, and sinker. And again, the responsibilities that I took upon myself were those. The very things that we fail to recognize is those, the struggles. But through perseverance, I rebounded. Through perseverance, I said to myself, I will never, ever be tempted like this again. And I'm going to take strongly into consideration of those. So by moving forward, I trudge on. I look past that, and I just keep moving on. Keep moving on. That's all you have to do. That the very things that what we then sometimes not come across understanding from the basis of the job world. The job world that we're in, the corporate world. There are good things in the corporate world, to go back to the extent of the corporate world, and that we observe that in today's time, the very ongoing situation of the COVID-19, we're not satisfied that we have to wear masks every day in the very things that we have to do, but we have to, in extents, to be adaptable, flexible, versatile. The very things that we struggle not to have. It's very important to have, but we sometimes not even make the choice to be those characters, to be in those characteristics. But no one recognized that when you are taken advantage of, okay, call those people out. Call them out and let them know, hey, you're taking advantage of me. What's going on? So that's where you come to sense and perform the discussion. Discuss that matter. Whether it be through your boss, your supervisors, your coworkers, your partners, through performing business in various number of clients who've wanted to buy for your partnership. So in that very extent of this recording from the video that I talked through, I'm very glad that I was able to put my face in front of the camera for a change, so that way everyone can see my face and know that I haven't changed to the ugliest, but it's all about staying clean, healthy, safe practices in health. So I take this message as a lesson, but also take it as your next performance. So be good, be well, catch you up around next time. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.